Hello and welcome to IG's Trading the Markets podcast. I'm Victoria Scholar, and today we're here to talk about responsibility and ownership when it comes to trading. Now, we've spoken to this guest before about how he came to be a trader and what he thinks of the current markets, but today we're turning to the psychology, a central yet often overlooked part of learning to trade. Chris Capre from Skies Forex. Chris, great to chat to you again.
Good to be back.
So let's just start first and foremost. I mean, how important is the mindset when it comes to trading?
I think it's one of the most important things. You really only have 4 skills that you're mastering as a trader, and that's your buying and selling decision. That could be technical or fundamental. That's how you choose to get in and out of the market. So you have that skill to master. You have your risk management skills that you have to master. You have to understand the math. You have to understand how much to risk to optimize your performance and maximize your edge, and when to be defensive. You have to have analytical skills in the sense that you have to be able to look at your own numbers and your own trading and see where you perform the best. What are your weak spots and leaks that you have to plug so that you can continue to improve? And the 4th skill that you have to master is mindset. And the thing about it is that we are, as traders, we are performance-based athletes in some sense, except we're not using our bodies, we're using our minds. And so the mind has to be sharp. All the decisions that we make to buy and sell, to analyze what to look at, what not to look at, it all comes from our minds. And so it's sadly, you're right. It's one in the sense that it's incredibly critical, but it's also one of the least talked about subjects because it's not as sexy. It's not like telling us how to make money right now. And, the bottom line is it's not something that's seen. Traders are more focused on what they can see versus what they can't see. And it's hard to see your mindset, but it's absolutely essential, and it's influencing everything that a trader does.
So when it comes to the mindset and psychology, what are some of the typical beginner trader mistakes that you might see?
Yeah. So in terms of mindset, one of the things I see a lot of traders making is they put 90% of all their training and emphasis on the charts and the strategy and the buy and sell decisions. It would kind of be like it would be like a football player in the Premier League that all they focus on is a good shot, but they don't focus on like passing or dribbling or positioning or cutting off angles or anything like that, or seeing where their teammates are. And that person's going to be very limited. So if you look at, you could see this very clearly in YouTube. Scan all the videos that are about trading strategies, giving exact details on strategies. They're going to have the highest views, the highest likes. They're going to have the highest rankings. You look at the videos on mindset, and they're going to have a fraction of the viewership. So I think one of the biggest things that new traders underestimate until they have their first kind of mindset experience and how their mindset affects their performance is they spend 90% of their time when learning how to trade just by focusing on the charts, just by focusing on how can I buy and sell, what's the strategy, and they skip the mindset aspect of trading. And then they start to realize, hey, I'm repeating the same mistakes over and over and over again. And eventually the pain for most people becomes so strong that they're like, okay, I can no longer take making these expensive mistakes. I need help. And so that's the turning point for most traders. But until they get to that, it's just one of the biggest mistakes is de-emphasizing the mindset aspect.
Okay, now one topic that you've written about recently when it comes to trading, and I've heard this buzzword quite a lot, not just in trading, but elsewhere, but I'm interested in how it relates to this topic, limiting beliefs. What are they, and how do you break through them?
Yeah, it's a great question. So limiting beliefs are something that we all have. Everybody has them. There's nobody out there that doesn't have them. And part of that can be conditioning from familial conditioning from our family environment. Some of it can be social. Some of it can be cultural. Some of it can be, it could be generational. Like millennials may have certain beliefs that are, kind of imbued upon them very deeply that they don't recognize that they're just kind of there working all the time. And so Limiting beliefs are beliefs that don't allow somebody to kind of see things as they are in the moment. They only force people to see them through a certain lens. For example, my parents grew up in the Great Depression. And so, you're talking about one of the most economically devastating times for, somebody to grow up in. So when they were growing up, resources were scarce, and they grew up in the streets of New York. And so you're talking very, very troubling times. And so for them, they ingrained these beliefs about money that were mostly based upon fear and scarcity. And when, I was born, that was what they were communicating to me. Everybody's heard the idea, oh, money doesn't grow on trees. Or how many times have you heard your parents say, what do you think, I'm made of money? And, these are these beliefs that they impress upon us, that cultures impress upon us, society. And once we hear them enough, they become wired into our brain. And once something's wired into your brain, you're going to execute that belief, that neurological habit, 90+% of the time. So a limiting belief isn't just something that's purely psychological, but it's actually neurological as well. And it's something that we have to, they're beliefs that limit our ability to perceive things as they are, which is usually much more fluid in the moment than this kind of concrete fixed way that our beliefs force us to see things.
How do you break through them? How do you break through those limited beliefs?
Yeah, this is a great question. So my approach on this, I tend to approach it from both a neurological perspective and a psychological perspective. So I try and employ both body and mind as much as possible, use my physiology as much as possible. So let's just start with the neurological aspects. If you have a wired belief into your brain, you can think of wired beliefs, like deeply held wired neurological beliefs, as like grooves. So like if you go out on the snow, I live in the mountains and we get a lot of snow. Like last year we had something like 60 feet of snow, and that was a light year for us. And so, the first time there's a huge kind of snowfall, you walk through the snow, you're making the first tracks. But then as you walk through those same tracks more and more and more, pretty soon the snow packs down, and it no longer is like this powdery thing that's hard to get through. It's like packed, it's grooved, and it's easier for you to walk through that path in the snow. That's how our brains work. And so the more you think something, the more you mentally, activate certain neurological circuits, the deeper those grooves get. And eventually, the brain is very efficient. It's going to take the neurological path that has the deepest grooves most of the time. 90% of the time, wherever the deepest neurological grooves are in your brain, that's where it's going to send the signals through, because it already has the chemistry set up. It's very easy. There's no resistance to activate that thought or that neurological circuit. So how do you get past limiting beliefs? From a neurological perspective, you have to wire different grooves into your brain. And so the first step always in changing limiting beliefs is awareness. You have to become aware of the actual limiting belief itself. You have to see, like, where is it that I have a limiting belief? And for me, I got certain limiting beliefs about money from my parents because they passed on their Great Depression, fear, scarcity mindset to me. And I had to change that. And so the first step is awareness. And then once you have the awareness, then you can kind of choose certain psychological or neurological kind of methods to help rewire your brain. And you can do, there's this whole thing like The Secret. They talked about, oh, if you just think about it, it's going to happen. And if that was the case, there'd be a lot more billionaires around there driving with the Ferraris because they had all thought about it. Thinking in and of itself is not sufficient. You have to employ all neuroplasticity, which is the ability to wire new habits into your brain. There's 7 neurological traits. There are things that you can do to activate it, and 4 are primary. And the best way to think about this is the acronym FIRE. So that is, you have feeling, you have intention, you have repetition, and you have emotion. And so, sorry, not feeling, focus. The first one's focus. So focus, intention, repetition, and emotion. And so if you can direct your focus onto a particular habit, then your brain is much more likely to wire that in deeper versus someone who's constantly multitasking. If you have this intention, like, okay, I have this limiting belief around money or around trading or around success or billionaires or whatever, well, then I'm going to redirect my intention and efforts so that I can continually work on this. And then you have repetition. And this is kind of like one of the number one things, is that the neurological cells have to repeat this firing sequence over and over and over again. Just like when you had to ride a bike, you had to do it over and over and again, and then pretty soon it started to stick. And so you have to repeat these models and these behaviors and these methods that helped redirect this neurological energy, this psychological energy, these beliefs into a different format. And then the emotion helps because on a neurological level, when we have deep emotions, it increases the neurological cocktails in our brain. It increases the presence of certain neurotransmitters, certain reward transmitters like dopamine. Very, very important for helping to rewire certain habits. We have to give ourselves a reward and it feel like there's a reward out there for changing our behaviors. So I tend to employ this FIRE method, and I'll be saying more about this because we'll be publishing new content on this very soon based on the most latest neuroscience. But those are very, very powerful methods to start with.
Now, you also wrote recently about the difference between passion and being interested when it comes to trading. Tell us what you mean there.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that I think people have this experience with. When people have a lot of things that they could be interested in, for example, someone might be interested in working out. Like I was at my house, I have an air bike and I get on the air bike for about 30 minutes every single day. And, my girlfriend's like, man, I really want to do that. But then she doesn't take the time to actually get on the bike. And she has her own reasons. She's doing other forms of exercise. But, in her mind, she's interested in doing it, but there's no action behind it. And so there's a lot of things that we can be interested in, and we tend to put, kind of half-hearted efforts into doing them. But when something is a passion of yours, it almost becomes kind of like an obsession to where you think about it all the time, you research it, you try and like build your skills in that. And, I think the word passion was kind of used a lot over the last 5-10 years of like, follow your passion, follow your passion. And there's some truth in that. And it's totally important that if you want to become excellent at something, you're going to have passion for it. But passion is necessary, but not sufficient in and of itself. Because when things get hard, your passion might wane. And if you're only following whatever you're most passionate about and your passion wanes, you'll just give up on that. So it's important that if you want to excel at something, that you really excel at something, especially something that's challenging like trading, you're going to have some sort of sense of urgency of wanting to grow. You have to have this growth mindset that you work on it every single day, not focusing on how can I turn my 10,000 into a million tomorrow, but how can I build the skills so that I can turn this 10,000 into a million over time? And so, I would look at it as just a strong sense of verb and fascination and almost obsession with something to where you think about it a lot. You direct a lot of your life's energies around it. Like I get to bed at a certain period of time because I want to be sharp when I'm trading. I get up at a certain time because I want to have time to prepare for trading. Like I've committed my life and things in my life, even my relationship. Like I spend different time with my girlfriend in my relationship so I can get the sleep that I need. That's someone who's passionate will make those commitments. Someone who's passionate and will execute, they'll make those commitments. Whereas someone who just has the fleeting passion of it, they'll have the highs, but then when things get hard, they'll give up.
So is that something that you can develop, or is that just something that you either have or you don't?
It can certainly be developed. There's certain things in my life that I was definitely not passionate about before that I wouldn't say discredited, but more of like I didn't have as much interest in. Like, for example, many years ago, I wasn't interested in options trading, and I felt it was too complex compared to the way I was trading now. And I was making money. So I had this belief of like, well, why ruin a good thing if, I'm already doing well? But then as I had some, trader friends who seriously urged me to get into it. And as I start to explore it, I said, okay, well, I'm going to commit to learning this. I'm not going to commit to necessarily trading options, but I'll commit to learning it and seeing what's there. And eventually, something that I just didn't have a taste for, that I didn't enjoy, I ended up becoming very passionate about. And now 3 out of every 4 trading books I'm reading are about options. So passions, I don't think there's this, you have it, you're born with it, or you don't have it, or anything like that. I think people can have strong tendencies towards things, but I think people's values change over time, especially as their life changes and their experience changes. And many things in my life, and maybe you've had this, but many things in my life that I wasn't passionate about before, or I didn't think were as valuable before, now are very valuable to me.
Also, just before we go, we said we'd talk about responsibility and ownership. These are two keywords that you've talked about a lot. You've really highlighted the importance of them when it comes to trading. Tell us why they're so important for a trader.
Yeah. So if we don't take responsibility for our trading, our performance, our results, then we're giving away power. We're giving away power to things outside of our control. We can't control the markets. I don't have that power. I don't have that wealth to do that. But I am a willing participant choosing to engage the markets, understanding there are certain rules that may work for or against me. If I don't accept that responsibility and I want to blame the markets and blame the market makers and blame the brokers, which you go on forums where there's a lot of losing traders, you're going to see that kind of discussion very rampant. And I can tell you 100% that as long as somebody's in that mindset of blaming others, they're never going to achieve success. You know, try and think of the best footballers in the world. Did they ever spend most of their time blaming others for their performance, like, you know, how they practiced or who shot the ball or, you know, how things didn't go a certain way? No, they don't do that. They take responsibility. And when you take responsibility, it means you're taking ownership of your actions and you take control of the, or you are taking the power back by saying, hey, I'm 100% responsible. And so, you know, it's super, super important. There are things that we can control and there are things that we cannot control. And I think people get a little frustrated with the things they can't control, which is a losing battle. You're not going to win that battle. There's nothing you can do there's only so much you can do with the things that are not in your control. But the things that are within your control, if you say, hey, look, I'm the common denominator in all these trading situations. And so if I'm the common denominator, I'm the one responsible. I chose to get in at a certain price. I chose to go long or short. I chose to put my stop loss where it is. I can't blame the market for shaking me out. I was the one who made those decisions. And so when you don't take responsibility and you don't take ownership, you give your power away. When you take responsibility and you take ownership, then you get that power, you keep that power. You're not giving it away, but you're owning that power. And you're also saying, hey, look, that gives me the energy to focus on the things I can work on. Because as long as you're blaming somebody else, you're not focusing on what you can work on. You're focusing on other people. And so it's really a question of power and giving it away or taking that power back. Because once you give it away, you don't have it to work with. Your efforts are spent.
All right, Chris, I'm so sorry, but we've run out of time. It's been so great to chat to you again, this time about some of the psychological aspects around trading. And I know that our UK listeners will be very happy with your football anecdotes there, rather than American football or baseball or something else that we don't understand. So we do really appreciate
that. I did that
that.
on purpose. I did that on purpose. I
Like
played soccer
transatlantic,
my whole life, and everybody in the world calls it football, and we call it soccer here. I personally, I call it football to almost everybody. It's only with
I was
Americans that
very
I call it
touched by
soccer.
that.
So I wish we would get this straight in the country, that we got to start calling it football, because that's what it is.
Well, don't worry, it wasn't lost on me. That is all we have time for. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast, IG's Trading the Markets. Thank you to my guest, Chris Capre from Skies Forex, who will hopefully be speaking to again very soon. I'm Victoria Scholar, and if you enjoyed listening today, don't forget to subscribe.